Hello, I'm David Sinden, and this is Songs and Stories. Songs and Stories is our Chorister training program here at St. Peter's Episcopal Church this year. Today, I'm standing in the sanctuary of the church. The sanctuary is the part of the church closest to the front, closest to the high altar. So you can see I've got some altar flowers over here. And I've got this really interesting looking flag over my shoulder, and I wonder if you know what kind of flag that is. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the reason I'm standing by this flag is because coming up on November 30th, we have the Feast of St. Andrew. St. Andrew is the first saint that we celebrate in the calendar of the church year, because the church year begins in Advent. Advent is the 4 Sundays before Christmas. It's a time of preparation for the coming of Jesus. So I thought to myself, if St. Andrew really is the first saint in the calendar, then he must be a pretty important saint. So I want to tell you a story about St. Andrew. This is a story that we hear in the Gospel of Matthew. It's the first time that we hear Andrew's name. As Jesus walked by the Sea of Galilee, he saw 2 brothers, Simon, who is called Peter, and Andrew, his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. And he said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you fish for people." Immediately they left their nets and followed him. As he went from there, he saw 2 other brothers, James, the son of Zebedee, and his brother John, in the boat with their father Zebedee, mending their nets. And he called to them. Immediately they left their boat and their father and followed him. So that's kind of a remarkable story. All Jesus has to say is, "Come, follow me." And he also says this kind of mysterious phrase, "I will make you fish for people." Remember, these are people who are fishermen. They're catching fish. And Jesus says, "You can catch people if you follow me." That's really kind of strange. One of the things our parents tell us is don't go with a stranger. And here are these men who are fishing, and they've never met Jesus before. But all he has to say is, "Come, follow me." And the remarkable thing about this story and these disciples is that they do. The other thing that I heard in that story that I really like is our church is named after St. Peter, and Andrew is Peter's brother. So I think that's another reason that we should pay attention to St. Andrew. Okay, so now I want to tell you a little bit about this flag behind me. This is the flag of the Episcopal Church, and we have quite a few different crosses on this flag. This red part here is the cross of St. George, and this cross helps us remember that we're descended from the Church of England. This Episcopal Church that came to the United States really came from the Church of England. But there's another smaller cross. There's a lot of them, actually. This white cross here is in the shape of an X. And that's kind of an unusual shape for a cross. But this is the cross of St. Andrew. The X-shaped cross is the cross of St. Andrew. And the reason that there are 9 of them is because there were 9 original dioceses, 9 original geographic states that made up the Episcopal Church when it was founded. When the church was founded, we needed bishops. The Episcopal Church is a church of bishops. And the Church of England didn't want to make any bishops for the American church. So the American church went to Scotland, and that's where Bishop Samuel Seabury, the first bishop in the Episcopal Church, was ordained. He was ordained in Scotland. And the cross of St. Andrew, that X-shaped cross, is the cross of Scotland. He's the patron saint of Scotland. In fact, if you look at the flag of Scotland, you will see one giant St. Andrew's cross, a white cross on a blue background. So that's our connection to the Church of Scotland and St. Andrew. So now I want to take a look at a hymn in our hymn book that mentions some of these brothers that Jesus calls. It doesn't actually mention Andrew by name, but it does mention his brother. Remember, his brother is named Peter. His full name is Simon Peter. This is hymn 661 in the hymnal 1982, and the poem goes like this. Remember, hymns are poems. They cast their nets in Galilee, just off the hills of brown, such happy, simple fisher folk before the Lord came down. Contented, peaceful fishermen, before they ever knew the peace of God that filled their hearts brimful and broke them too. Young John, who trimmed the flapping sail, homeless in Patmos died. Peter, who hauled the teeming net, head down, was crucified. The peace of God, it is no peace, but strife closed in the sod. Yet, let us pray for but one thing, the marvelous peace of God. This is a great poem by William Alexander Percy, and it's been set to music in our hymn book here. We sing about two of the brothers. We sing about Peter, and we know that his brother was Andrew, and we sing about John, and we know that his brother was James. These are the first four disciples that Jesus calls to him: Peter and Andrew and James and John, all four of those guys. And we sing in this hymn, we sing that they're fishermen. We sing that they're hauling teeming nets. That means nets full of fish. And they were content. They were happy doing that work until Jesus came along and showed them another way. He showed them another way to fish, really, a way to fish for people. And the last verse of that hymn is really kind of mysterious. The peace of God, it is no peace, but strife closed in the sod. These are kind of challenging words. They remind us that the Christian life brings us peace, but it also brings us a lot of work. It brings us a new way of living if we want to take that work on. So now that we have this poem, they cast their nets in Galilee, let's think about how we might sing these words to music. So if a hymn is a poem, then we just need some music to play along with the poem to sing it. So here's some music that you might recognize. That's the beginning of Amazing Grace, and so we can use that hymn tune to sing Amazing Grace. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. But we can really use, any number of tunes to sing Amazing Grace. So what about the stars at night are big and bright, deep in the heart of Texas? Maybe you don't know that song. It goes like this. The stars at night are big and bright, deep in the heart of Texas. The prairie sky is big and wide, deep in the heart of Texas. I used to live in Texas, so I really like Deep in the Heart of Texas. So let's see if Amazing Grace will work with that tune, Deep in the Heart of Texas. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. Yeah, it kind of works. And we can pull any number of tricks, probably not that one, but we can pull serious tricks in the hymnal to swap tunes around with different words depending on how we're feeling. So this brings me to They Cast Their Nets in Galilee. I'm going to play the tune in the hymnal. And that's a perfectly nice melody. We could sing the hymn to that melody. In fact, most churches do. They cast their nets in Galilee, just off the hills of brown, such happy simple fisher folk, before the Lord came down. And there really is nothing wrong with that, but I did have a parishioner come to me one day and say, I just really don't care for that tune. And her name was Libby. And Libby was an excellent musician. She was a church musician in her own right. She had her own career as a church musician, and she was very, very supportive of the music here at St. Peter's. And so I listened very closely to what Libby had to say, and I started to think about it, and I thought, well, sure. I mean, we could certainly try to come up with another melody for that tune. And so that's what I've been doing lately. I've been trying to come up with another melody for They Cast Their Nets in Galilee. And here's what I came up with. I came up with a sort of rising line that came down a little bit. And I guess one of the reasons I might have done that is I was thinking about a fishing net being cast up into the air and then coming down into the water. They cast their nets. So we could sing it that way. They cast their nets in Galilee. But then I started thinking that maybe that was too much for the very beginning of the hymn. So what if I came up with something a little bit less vertical? Maybe something that doesn't go quite as high. So on solfege, that's only going up to La. Do, do, re, mi, sol, la, so, mi. And I sort of like that a little bit better for the beginning. So now I've got two ideas. I've got the idea that goes to La. And I've got the idea that goes all the way to high Do. Do, do, re, mi, so, do, la, so. And so if I come up with a couple of other phrases, which I did, I really have a whole tune, and it sounds like this. So I always remembered Libby's idea, and I wanted to give her some other kind of tune to sing this hymn with. And now that I've written this tune, I wish I could share it with her. Libby actually died a year ago this last September. So even though I won't have the chance to sing it with her or play it for her, I think that I want to dedicate this tune to Libby's memory. And composers get to name their tunes. If you look in the hymn book, there's all these wonderful tune names. So the tune name for this hymn tune will be Libby's tune. Let's go downstairs to the church. And even though I'm not sure I've got this exactly right, I'm still working out some of the harmonies. I might even change some of the melody, and I think that's okay. I want to sing for the very first time what is Libby's tune. Their nets in Galilee, just off the hills of brown. Such happy, simple fisher folk, before the Lord came down. Contented, peaceful fishermen, before they ever knew the peace of God that filled their hearts brimful and broke them too. Young John, who trimmed the flap
sail, homeless in Patmos died. Peter, who hauled the teeming net, head down was crucified. The peace of God, it is no peace, but strife closed in the sod. Yet let us pray for but one thing, the marvelous peace